True. Very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled. Above all was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in heaven and earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Observe how healthily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how the idea first entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, he had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now, this is the point. You fancy me mad, but madmen know nothing. And you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch on his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I made an opening sufficiently for my head, I put in a dark lantern, all closed, no light shone out. Then I thrust my head in. You would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved slowly, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Would a wise man have been so wise as this? Madmen, sorry. Would a madman been so as wise? No. And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every night, just at midnight, but I found the eye was always closed. So it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when day broke, I went boldly into the chamber, calling him in a hearty tone, inquiring how he had passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man to suspect that every night I looked upon him while he slept. Upon the 11th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers. To think, there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly, as if startled. Presently, I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when the world slept, it has welled up from my bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him. Although I chuckled at heart, I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been growing ever since upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had found all in vain, because death had stalked with his black shadow before him, and it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel the presence of my head within the room. And I had waited a long time, very patiently. Without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it, and a simple, dim ray shot out from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. Oh, it was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. And have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held my lantern motionless. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. I thought the heart would burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between. I then replaced the board so cleverly, so cunningly, that the human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. A tub had caught all. Sorry. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bells sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart. What had I now to fear? There entered 3 policemen, or 3 men, introduced themselves as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled. For what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search well. I brought the chairs into the room so they could rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. They sat And while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But before long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied ringing in my ears. But still, they sat and chatted. The ringing continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, yet the sound increased. And what could I do? It was a dull, quick sound, much a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, but the noise steadily increased. Oh God! What could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore, I swung the chair which I had been sitting, but the noise arose all over and continually increased. It grew louder, louder, and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possible they heard not? No, no. They heard, they suspect, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think, but but anything was better than this agony. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now, again, louder, 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 villains! I shrieked. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here! It is the beating of his hideous heart! So, that's why I'm in jail. What are you in for?